Italy! I feel like everybody at some part of their life has a desire to go somewhere in Italy. There's just so many big bucket list items, amazing places, and history. So I've been to Italy several times over the last few years, and I put together a list of my top 10 places you cannot miss if you are going to be planning a trip to Italy. Roma, aka Rome. Often regarded as the birthplace of Western civilization, Rome has a crazy past, over 2,500 years since its founding. Few cities can offer the amount of art, history, and culture that Rome can. Now, I love Rome. It's one of my favorite cities in Italy because there's just so many old historic buildings. So even though it is one of the most popular places, like for tourists, there's just dozens and dozens of tourists there. It's just, you cannot miss it. Just so much history. Literally, the whole Roman Empire is absolutely one of my favorite cities in Italy, hands down. Gotta go to Rome. Also, Rome in the summertime. Traveling to Rome in the summer, one, it's just really hot, and two, that's when like the most amount of tourists are there. So if you don't like crowds and heat, travel in the off season to Rome, and it's amazing, it's spectacular. Turin, aka Torino. In the winter. Tucked away in the northwestern corner of Italy, this is a super underrated city that a lot of tourists neglect. So Torino is the gateway of all of the winter sports you could possibly imagine, because again, they hosted the Winter Olympic Games, so they know a little bit about winter and things to do in the winter time. So that's when I went there. I got to explore around the city in winter, and it was a really cool place, and I highly recommend. Verona. So Shakespeare set 3 of his plays in this popular northern city, and many people come here to seek out the famous House of Juliet and the balcony that, oh Romeo, Romeo, you know, like the Romeo and Juliet balcony. It's a famous thing to do in Verona. Now, one of the coolest things about Verona is that they have a 2,000-year-old Roman amphitheater, and they still do annual fair shows and operas in the amphitheater, which I found quite spectacular, even in comparison to the Colosseum. Venice, oh Venice. Venice is located in northeastern Italy, and it's spread across 118 small islands in the Venetian lagoon. So it's also referred to as the floating city. You don't find any cars here. It is all boats and canals, which it is famous for, taking a gondola ride through the various canals of Venice. Now, unfortunately, Venice is in a very peculiar position, as it is a sinking city. This is well documented. They're having a lot of issues with the fact that the city is built on water and sea levels are rising. So, go see Venice. Go see Venice now while there is still a Venice. Not to sound like depressing or anything, but Venice is changing each and every year. Go see it now and experience the joy of Venice. Also be aware though that there's going to be a lot of tourists there. The main hub, the main center of Venice is generally just a tourist city, and the residents live on the outskirts of Venice, which gives it a weird sort of interesting vibe, but definitely have to go check it out. Oh, the aroma of a lovely Italian wine. Now, if you like Italian wine, you're gonna love Tuscany. So Tuscany is a large region in central Italy that encompasses rolling hills, mountains, and spectacular types of art. But what it's most famous for is its collection of internationally renowned wine regions and countless vineyards. Because it's one of the world's best destinations for wine lovers, they produce a lot of different types of Italian wines in the various small cities and villages that you can find in the various regions of Tuscany. All of the small villages alone in Tuscany are just simply stunning. There are dozens of them that you can go visit, each having their own unique charm and character. You can buy dozens of little artisan like pastas, and of course, lots of wine from the various vendors and shops. You can visit and tour all of the vineyards that you like. There are churches on the hills. It's just a beautiful, beautiful region of Italy, and it's everything that you imagine Tuscany would be in the movies. That is Tuscany, with lots of wine. So I will cheers to that. Cinque Terre. Found on the rugged coastline of the Italian Riviera, Cinque Terre is a string of 5 colorful villages and one of the most charming regions of Italy. Now, much of its charm comes from the location and the absence of automobiles and lack of corporate development. One of the most popular things to do here is actually to hike the various trails between the villages. So you can hike up into the hillside and hike down to the villages and then stay on the villages. So it's like a Cinque Terre trek. There's a lot of different options depending on your travel abilities and your physical abilities on how you want to explore the region. Cinque Terre is an interesting one from a tourist perspective because it started as one of the lesser known places to visit in Italy when you compare it to like Venice and Rome, but it actually has a capacity limit. So it's grown so much over the last decade that they actually limit, or at least in some of the villages, try and limit the amount of tourists that can actually visit them. So if you are planning on visiting Cinque Terre, please do. But again, it's one of those like maybe plan for the off season and you'll have a little bit better luck. Do the trek if you can, you know, exercise, yeah. Florence. Now, Florence is actually the capital of Tuscany and it has a very colorful and turbulent history as it is also considered the birthplace of the Renaissance. Oh yes, that little movement called the Renaissance. Ranked as one of the most beautiful cities in the world, it is still home to some of the most recognizable pieces of artistic and architectural masterpieces from the Renaissance. Literally, the most popular things to do in Florence is to visit the museums. Now, again, museums have a capacity limit, so if you are going to visit, make sure you buy your tickets beforehand or make sure you line up early because they have some spectacular museums there. Just so much art, so much architecture, so much sculpturage. Also, Florence is pretty close to the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which is still leaning, by the way, still a leaning tower of Pisa. The Vatican City. While technically it's not a part of Italy, the Vatican City is a walled enclave within the city of Rome. It's actually the world's smallest country, but it contains such sites as St. Peter's Basilica, the Sistine Chapel, the Vatican Museums, and some of the world's most famous paintings and sculptures. The Vatican is just a huge museum that you can spend hours and hours browsing through all the various pieces. It's just such an amazing, cool place to visit. You definitely got to visit the Vatican, but you definitely need to book your tickets online and beforehand so you skip the long lineups. See, this is a trend in Italy. Italy is a very popular place. So if you are going to the Vatican City, I went there in peak season, but just book your tickets online so you save yourself the huge lineups. When in Rome, do the Vatican City, because it's literally right there. Pompeii! Almost 2,000 years ago, Mount Vesuvius erupted and buried the city of Pompeii in ash, perfectly preserving all of the town and the ruins. And even the people. Yes, kind of creepy, definitely creepy. A really cool thing that I personally enjoyed about Pompeii was being able to walk through the streets and feel like you are walking in an ancient Italian city, because they were still, like, the streets were still streets and the buildings, the structure, the main structures were still there. Like, it felt like an ancient city, whereas like in Rome you get buildings, you'll get certain buildings in places that were preserved. All of Pompeii was preserved. In my travel experiences, it's one of the most unique things I've ever been able to experience, where I felt really immersed in what it was like back then. Bergamo. Nestled in the foothills of the Alps, Bergamo is about 40 kilometers northeast of Milan in the Lombardy region of Italy. Now, the city itself is split into two parts. There's the lower modern part of the city, and then there's the upper historic part, which is connected to by various cable cars. So you could take cable cars up and you get an amazing view all over Bergamo. It's just a really good sized town where it's totally walkable. So not like Milan, for example, which is just massive. Bergamo is much more smaller and much more intimate, and you really get that Italian feel of everything that you're doing, minus the crowds, because it is not nearly as popular as all the other places that I've listed. Alright, and there we have it. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you've enjoyed learning and discovering a little bit more about Italy. If you've never been to Italy before, if you have, I'd love to know what was your favorite places to go down below in the comments. And if you haven't been to Italy, now what are your top places that you want to go in Italy? Like, where do you want to go in Italy? Let me know down below, and I look forward to reading all your guys' comments. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more travel advice and videos coming your way every week. And I will see you guys again in a few days' time with another video. All right, happy travels!